The Utah Jazz are the hottest team in the NBA. They have won 12 of their last 14. They have won 6 straight. They have won 8 straight at home. And they went wire to wire tonight against the Indiana Pacers. We're talking about it when we come back on POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Utah Jazz blow out the Indiana Pacers tonight, wire to wire. They led it 33-26 at the end of one. They added 7 more on by the half. They were up by 20 by halftime, by the third quarter, and they win it going away 121-101 in the game. It was really never in doubt. The Pacers are without Tyrese Halliburton. They're not the same team that we saw earlier this year. The Jazz, though, continue to just play this. We saw all the same things. We saw them execute a game plan perfectly, take away the transition from Indiana. Indiana did not have a high efficiency or frequency in transition, which is partially Halliburton, but it's also partially game plan. And then we saw a lot of different things from the Jazz tonight. Primarily, honestly, what has become, maybe this has been a question we've had all years, who's your second best player? It may have become obvious to it. It may be Collin Sexton, because Collin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen were by far the 2 best players on the floor.
Yeah, very efficient. I mean, and the shots I think that both of those guys are getting are not low percentage shots. I mean, the creativity by Collin Sexton is just unreal, because he can play big, he can play small, he takes it in there among the trees. But and I really think also that Markkanen has really translated his game into something different.
Let's talk about this.
Right.
We saw Will Hardy in the post-game press conference the other night really went out of his way to talk about Lowry's game against L.A., his defense against Anthony Davis, but also the force that he played with and taking the ball coast to coast in aspects that we've just not seen. There's an interesting stat. Tim Lacombe found this. Of players that score 20 points a game, Lowry has the shortest touch time of anyone in the NBA. So why does that matter? Because it means if he's really getting almost everything on other people's creation, whether it's picks or actions or offensive plays, he's not self-creating. Like Luka's got a long touch time. Some of those guys, that means they're self-creating. It also means that he's not quite able to bend a defense to create opportunities for his teammates. So and he probably can't play a lot of isolation, right? We've tried. So those are the 3 steps of Lowry's next step of his career. He's incredible. His body movement, his power, his athleticism. Rick Carlisle talked about him being the most commonly like Dirk Nowitzki player there, as he talked about when they went through the draft workouts with him, how he tested through the roof in every regard. So he's brilliant. He's still an all-star without these 3. But if he's going to go from being a top 25 player in the NBA to a top 15 or top 10 player in the NBA, what he has to learn is how to create his own offense and how to create for his teammates. Step 1, we're seeing tonight on multiple setups, and they had some weird matchups on him. He had longer touch time. He went and drove to the basket himself on multiple dribbles. He worked out of the post. He's taken these rebounds and gone coast to coast. We're seeing significant steps out of Lauri Markkanen right now.
So what you're seeing also, David, is just think about this. Some guys, when they're trying to make this different, play differently, or they're trying to add something to their game that can help them, whether it's offensive or defensive, whatever, they struggle a little bit. Turnover, foul, something like charging foul, something like that. We haven't seen any of that. I mean, it's like what he's doing is like he's been working on it for a couple of years, and he's getting very efficient at it. That move he had tonight where he slowed down, draws the contact, lets the defender go by and just banks off the glass. We hadn't seen that. That's something that he's adding on. And I totally agree with you, going coast to coast. Now the next step, coast to coast, dribbling. Can you pass off the dribble? Make your teammates better.
All right, let's get to the next guy. And by the way, just a note, not that we need to revisit this, but both of these guys required for Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
So this was a really fascinating night for me as a broadcaster. We do these interviews with the coaches. We're fortunate enough. Will Hardy's very thoughtful and interesting. And you've got to come up, from our standpoint as a journalist, you're trying to find, or a broadcaster, you're trying to find something interesting to ask. Quite honestly, in the middle of a 5-game win streak, when you've won 11 of 13, there's not a lot to ask. I talked about Walker, so I was curious about Collin, because if you have Collin's career, he's unheralded, gets to camp, gets recruited by Alabama, suddenly becomes like a top 5 pick, goes to Cleveland, who's terrible, scores a bunch of points. The veterans get mad at him. They basically talk about they don't want to play with him. And after 1 year of scoring 20 points a game, Cleveland drafts Darius Garland right on top of him. In other words, we saw you. We don't like you. We're drafting this guy instead. I mean, there's no bigger insult you can have than on draft night being a 1 year player and average 20 points a game where they say, actually, we like this guy better. He spends a year trying to play with Darius Garland, maybe 2. And next thing you know, he gets injured and gets traded. I was going to be the face of Cleveland. I was the rebuild. Never mind. So I asked Will today, how is that? What has been the 17 months of building him up to this level been? The answer was not what I anticipated in any way, shape, or form. And I will play the entire thing for you on Locked on Jazz tomorrow. Will basically said, I changed.
Yes.
I had to be humble enough about my relationship to not, he had one of the great lines of all time. You don't date someone and call their ex-girlfriend to find out what they're like. And I had allowed too much of what people in Cleveland had said about Collin or what I'd heard about Collin to impact how I felt about him.
And how you coach him, how you were going to coach him. Yes.
And he said, it's a great, I had to think back and reassess myself that he never complains, works hard every day, shows up, lets me coach him. Never's come to my office and asked for playing time. Never asked for more shots. Never done anything everybody says he does. I had to let Collin be Collin. Sure, he drives me crazy, but I've said this before about Collin. I've never been around a player with a truer heart in this game of desire than Collin Sexton. And to watch him play like this, he is great right now. He is bona fide 20 points a game plus 50% scoring, shooting. That's awesome.
Yeah. So listening to all of that and then realizing, okay, he was drafted 8th by Cleveland, 2018. So now you're looking at 5 years into his career and the type of player that he's turned into. Tells me that Cleveland didn't have the patience, didn't want to work with him, and obviously thought something different than what Will thinks of Collin Sexton. I think the patience to work on a guy that with that much talent probably would have been the best, but what has worked out best for Collin Sexton? Cleveland trading him. And It's put him in a position now where he is a go-to guy on this team. He's reliable. He's worked very, very hard. He's being coached by someone who's understands his ability and giving him a chance to play his game for the most part.
I mean, I think I don't think it's one thing. So I think the question is faulty. But if someone were to ask me the one thing that's changed with the Jazz, it would be Collin Sexton into the starting lineup for an inefficient Jordan Clarkson.
Okay.
Like Jordan Clarkson, if you go back and look at his numbers as a starter before his injury, he was terribly inefficient. He was one of the most inefficient offensive players in the NBA. And you flip that for efficient play, and then Jordan coming off the bench, if he gets hot, we're unbeatable. If he goes 8 of 13 like tonight, you got no chance. But if he gets cold, then we can navigate that because you have other players doing it. And that's where Jordan was at his greatest under Quinn, was when Jordan got hot and we had Bojan and we had Donovan and we had Mike Conley. Forget about it. You're dead if Jordan Clarkson has a good game. We're back to that a little bit, where if Jordan's good, sorry, guys, you're not getting us. But if Jordan's bad, you actually have something so you can navigate it. Where prior, if Jordan was bad, we just lost.
Yeah, that was the reason he was 6th man of the year.
Right.
Because they let him go. He's a player that plays off the dribble, multiple dribbles, and gets to the free throw line. I mean, his creativity is unbelievable. But a lot of times his head was down. We're seeing more of his head up now because his assists. He's getting assists nowadays, but he'd end up tonight only a couple of assists, but he's been averaging somewhere around 5 a game. I think he's leading the team in assists right now.
So I don't know if this is true, but Roberto just said that there's a Reddit post that Collin Sexton scored 118 points in 111 minutes.
Huh? You'll have to check.
Because if that's true, that's something awesome. They want to see your shirt, Ron.
My shirt?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. You bet, baby. All right.
Who wanted to see it?
It's the chat room.
All right.
What else we got? I mean, there were a lot. Let's go to Rick Carlisle pregame. I thought that was really interesting. Rick Carlisle, remember the Jazz play Indiana the night before they go to before we went to Cleveland. Did we do Indiana, Cleveland, Detroit? No, that was just a different road trip. But we saw Indiana early. We weren't very good. So Rick Carlisle was asked, and I thought he gave the first answer yet. where he said they're playing all their tough guys. They're playing with a higher level of force. The tough guys are Chris Dunn, Collin Sexton, and Simone Fontecchio. And you know what? Sometimes just playing hard matters.
And we've heard that already. Play hard, pass the basketball. The Pacers beat the Jazz, 134. They scored 134 points on the Jazz during that trip. And a little payback.
I thought it was interesting. I thought Rick Darvin-Ham got asked about the Jazz. Everyone gets asked about the opposing question. It's like the cheesy question. Oh, what do you think about this team? And they all say the same thing. Oh, well, Lowry's really good, and they offensive rebound. And, like, it's such a bad answer every single time. Like, every time I'm like, okay, great, your stat guy gave you a bunch of stats about us. But, like, I seriously want – like, you know, Rick Carlisle tonight was like, okay, we'll run stuff that nobody else in the league runs because they run off-ball stuff to a 7-footer shooting threes. They play hard. They're playing with force, and they're playing tough guys. Like, I actually thought Rick Carlisle was the first coach that came in here and diagnosed why the Utah Jazz are now 12-2 over the last 14 games.
Makes sense.
Best record in the NBA. All right, we just two guys get it tonight.
Without a doubt.
Everyone's
Should
playing
be
well.
easy.
Guys did other stuff, but like two guys tonight.
Totally easy.
Collin and Lowry run away with the Stars. Jazz run away from Indiana. They win wire to wire. The Jazz since December 21st have the best record in the NBA. Since the Christmas, they have the best record in the NBA. Indiana had the same best record, but now Indiana doesn't. So Oklahoma City, if they win tonight, will have, which they just never seem to lose. So I'm assuming Indiana won tonight, or Oklahoma City won tonight. Oh, they're tied with the Lakers at 55. So that's going on right now. I'll drive home listening to John Ireland tonight. Promise you I'll listen to Laker broadcast.
Memphis beats Golden State 116-107 our next ball game.
So that's our next ball game, stretching our lead in over them. And Houston lost tonight against Philadelphia as well. So while we're at it to leave you tonight, let's leave you with the following. The Utah Jazz are currently sitting in the Western Conference in the ninth spot with a half game behind the Phoenix Suns, a game and a half ahead of the 10th place Houston Rockets, 2 games ahead of the Los Angeles Lakers, and 3 games ahead of the Golden State Warriors. Hello now. Jazz 132, Pacers 105. Have a great night. We now send you the first ever 24/7 sports channel. It's Locked On Sports Today.